FNAF has definitely jump scared its way into, I think, all of our hearts at this point. But let's be clear, it's not the only amazing indie horror game out there, and it's definitely not the only one that deserves some time in the spotlight. In fact, it's probably not even the scariest indie game out there. Welcome back, my fellow gamers, it's me, Amanda! What indie games do you find the most terrifying? Number 10. Lakeview Cabin Collection. This game actually sounds super cool. It's a game where you get to experience slasher films of the 70s and 80s from the inside out. In this game, you play as the survivors, taking control of one of the NPCs in an attempt to stop the Lakeview Cabin Killer. Here you play through horror film premises, attempting to solve puzzles and craft imagined strategies so that you can survive. If one of your NPCs dies, not a problem. You can obviously just keep playing, taking control of the survivors that are still left to you, but keep in mind that there are only so many survivors for you to control, and if you're not careful, you will run out of them and ultimately lose the game as a result. This game was apparently designed by one person, so it doesn't get more indie than that, really. Lakeview Cabin Collection was released in 2015 and is designed by Roop Tamanen. If you are a fan of slasher films and are used to shouting at the characters in them through your movie screen to make better choices, this is the game for you and a good test to see if you could actually make the right moves to ensure your survival by comparison. Could you survive a horror movie? Play this game and find out. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, why not check out our scary gaming playlist for even more, well, scary gaming content. Number 9. Dread Hunger. Dread Hunger has mixed reviews on Steam, but I still think the concept for this game is super interesting. I know I still want to play it. And I've been wanting to play it as well for some time. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. There's a lot of games on my list to play. While not specifically tagged as a horror game, the subject matter and paranoia involved, as well as the threat of cannibalism, seem to lend well to the game having a horror feel and belonging somewhere in the horror genre. And for fans of the series The Terror, this game will probably feel pretty horrific with that narrative reference kind of lodged in your mind. In Dread Hunger, you play as one on a crew of 8 who are aboard a ship attempting to carve out a path in the Arctic. Things obviously get desperate, and that's where some of the more horrific elements come into play, with 2 of you in essence being traitors who are praying to some kind of dark power in order to betray your teammates' efforts of survival. Dread Hunger was developed by the Dread Hunger team and published by Digital Confectioners based mainly out of New Zealand, it seems. The game was released in early 2021. Number 8. Mundaun. Mundaun is a hand-penciled horror game that does much in the way of creating a sense of foreboding. The art in it is both beautiful and disturbing, and the landscape that you explore is also frightfully desolate in a way that makes you feel very detached from the world, while also sometimes lulling you into a false sense of security because, you know, you feel like you're alone and you're like, I feel a little safe, feel like there's not monsters coming behind me. Oh no, there's monsters there. Mundaun is unique, which makes it stand out, but while seemingly simplistic looking with its desaturated surroundings, there is something eerie as well about the attention to detail everywhere you look. All of the textures in this game are hand-drawn, and it can make you feel like you are also kind of like trapped in a painting or a drawing. In the game, you play as the main character who heads to Mundaun after his grandfather passed away in a fire. You will explore the surroundings to learn of the truth behind what really happened to your grandfather and of the monster who haunts these mountains. Mundaun was released in 2021 by Hidden Fields and MWM Interactive. Hidden Fields is a Swiss indie game studio. Number 7. Bigfoot. Bigfoot is a player versus player as well as fully cooperative game where you and your friends play as a team of hunters attempting to find, document, and possibly even defeat Bigfoot in an attempt to prove the mythical beast's existence. However, one of you also has the option to play as the beast himself, Bigfoot. Arm yourself, face the night and your fears as you attempt to survive, no matter what side you're on. Bigfoot is also known for being out in the wilderness, which means he likely won't be the only threat that you might encounter as a hunter. Bigfoot is created by Cyberlight Game Studios, and while it's trending right now in terms of sales, the game itself was actually released way back in 2017. Another thing I should probably mention is that Bigfoot is insanely powerful and is really hard to defeat. Not just resilient and extremely durable, but also someone who could easily mess you up with a few simple swipes of his arm. So yeah. Number 6. Choo Choo Charles. Choo Choo Charles is a game that is definitely one of the most terrifying things I've ever played. Just the sounds in this game are enough to cause me to have nightmares for a week. In Choo Choo Charles, as ridiculous as it sounds, you've been called to Aranirum Island to hunt down a demon train that moves around on giant spider legs. I'm not joking. And even though I know that sounds pretty dumb and pretty ridiculous, it is actually one of the most terrifying and fun things that I have experienced, and I would definitely recommend you check it out and play it yourself. Not only is Choo Choo Charles terrifying though, it's also extremely entertaining with a cast of strange and unique characters for you to meet and interact with on the island, completing missions for them in exchange for that sweet scrap. Scrap can be used to upgrade your train, which will help you in encounters with Charles and later aid you in fully defeating him. That isn't where the danger stops either. There are other creatures lurking on Aranirum Island, which seems to be no strangers to monsters apparently. So if you feel like you are relatively safe when completing tasks a safe distance away from the demonic train, be wary because you definitely are not. Choo Choo Charles was created by indie game studio 2 Star Games and was released near the end of 2022. Number 5. Detention. Detention is in fact so good that only a few years after its release, it inspired a film to be made by the same name. This Taiwanese indie horror hit is inspired by real events that occurred in the 1960s in Taiwan, known as the White Terror. For those unfamiliar with this time in Taiwan's history and what went on, the White Terror was basically a time when martial law was declared, which enabled the government to punish and prosecute individuals for any activities that they were involved in that were deemed anti-state. In Detention, you play as a student who wakes up in their school only to find it severely transformed by multiple horrors. They must unlock the mystery of what has happened here and find a way to survive the being that threatens them. The game is made by Red Candle Games, an indie game studio based in Taiwan. Detention was released in 2017 with the film inspired by it of the same name being released in 2021. Both the game and the film have been acclaimed by critics, so I'd recommend both of them to you really. Assuming that you are someone that plays indie horror games that also likes watching horror films, which I think it'd be weird if someone didn't like both of those things, but I'm sure there's people out there that are, you know, I only do one or the other. Number 4. Phasmophobia. Phasmophobia is a horrifying game by Kinetic Games, but at least you'll have your friends to join you in this terrifying experience. This is kinda like Ghostbusters, but if it was a horror game and, you know, not a comedy movie. The game came out in 2020 in terms of its early access, and despite the fact that you play with friends, it is very easy for you to feel isolated as you tend to explore creepy locales on your own, often getting separated from those you're exploring with. Well, you kinda need to like split up in order to explore, so that's kind of part of the game. Also, I believe this game is still in early access, even though it's been in early access since 2020. I think still always being worked on, which is kind of cool. When things start getting supernatural, even your radio can start to malfunction seemingly, which can also make you feel very separated from the people that you're playing with, even though you're playing literally with them and you're in the same place. The other cool things that are also terrifying include the spirit box tool you can use in the game, which allows you to communicate directly with the ghosts in-game auditorily. And I believe that means your mic is actually what is used to communicate with the ghosts, which can then respond back to you. And I also think the ghost can hear you even when you're not using it, so ugh. Just the thought of that gives me chills. Phasmophobia was created by the British indie game studio Kinetic Games, and I believe to date is the only game that they have released. But like I said, they're still pretty much always working on it, so yeah. If you buy it, you'll also be getting a game that's like continually being developed, which I think is always fun to watch and experience. Number 3. Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Definitely one of the most frightening games of all time, even to this day. Amnesia: The Dark Descent is a game of madness, where the threats to your person aren't only physical, but also emotional and mental as well. And this game also likes to mess with you in really like trippy ways, so watch out for that. The more frightened you get, the more frightened and paranoid you are likely to become throughout the course of your playthrough as well. Amnesia came out in 2010, but even to this day, here in 2023, is still celebrated as one of the best and most revolutionary horror games of all time. Amnesia: The Dark Descent was made by Frictional Games, an independent video game developer from Sweden. They worked together to create Penumbra and its expansions before creating Amnesia: The Dark Descent and its follow-up, Rebirth. Currently, they're working on another game in the Amnesia line called Amnesia: The Bunker, which also looks like it will be an interesting and disturbing experience. While the follow-up, Amnesia Rebirth, didn't do quite as well, I'm hopeful for whatever else Frictional Games has in store in regards to this franchise, and just in general because they've already proven themselves, in my mind, to be one of the coolest indie game studios out there. And I think many people are and will continue to be looking forward to what they make for a long time, thanks to the success of this game, Amnesia: The Dark Descent, which just left such a huge mark on so many horror game enthusiasts. Number 2. Outlast. What is weird is that even in revisiting the Outlast Outlast trailer, I was like re-traumatized by it. It's so scary. I forgot how long ago this game came out as well. I remember watching this trailer back in the day and thinking this game looks amazing. And Outlast, it turns out, did not disappoint us. This game was released back in 2013, but still holds up today in terms of being one of the most scary games out there. It is a survival horror game with puzzle and adventure elements. In the game, you play as Mike Upshur, a journalist who is on a mission to explore a closed psychiatric facility that has a history of being involved with top secret experimentation. Red Barrels is the game studio behind the game, and what's even better, the studio is actually Canadian! Yay! Hailing from Montreal, Quebec. Since then, Outlast has been their claim to fame, and they have another anticipated Outlast related title slated to be released on PC this year. Number 1. Soma. Soma is one of the most horrifying games out there. It comes from a very well-known indie studio for another game that is even more famous and possibly more horrifying than it, despite being older, although, like I said, that's subjective. Obviously, I think Soma is more terrifying, that's why I put it at my number 1 spot. Soma was created by Swedish indie game studio Frictional Games. Yeah, that's right, we're going back to our good old Amnesia friends. Soma was released in 2015 and is a sci-fi horror game that makes you question the way you perceive the world around you, and even yourself. This game mostly takes place underwater, set in a facility located in the depths of the Atlantic Ocean. The facility you are in has been through a catastrophe, and it's now up to you to uncover the secrets behind the chaos, survive, and determine the best course of action moving forward. The atmosphere in this game is one of the most disturbing that I've ever seen, and the fact that you are trapped in an underwater facility, rapidly running out of resources, that's even more yikes to me, because the depths of the ocean, I both love them and I'm terrified by them. What do you think of these games? Have you played any of them? Are there any others that you'd recommend to fans of FNAF looking for something other that is indie and horror to enjoy? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep on gaming on. Pew pew!